Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Ann Crawford, and I'm the Reference and Adult Services Librarian at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library. And I thought, given that today's topic is about engaging book club reads for 2021, it made the most sense to film right here at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library in our biography section with all of our books. So today's presentation is all about the kinds of books that might be great selections for 2021 for your own personal book club, or in my case, the Wednesday book club that meets here at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library. Now, the interesting thing about book clubs is that sometimes your choices for your books can change. You know, you think a book is going to be a really good selection, and then you end up reading it, you think, I don't know if that's going to give us enough different topics to discuss, or, you know, I'm not sure if that's not too similar to something maybe we read the year before. So even with the library book club, sometimes we change up our titles, you know, on the fly. But for now, this is what I'm thinking about for the Wednesday book club. Now, you may be wondering, why on earth would I be talking about book club reads for 2021 in September? 2021 is a long time away, although really not so far away when you think about it, because the holidays will be here anytime now. But the reason I start in September is for just the reason I said, which is sometimes your selections change after you read the books, or maybe you look up the questions, or you think about what the discussion may be like, or you reflect on what books you've used in years past. But for now, these are the books that I've chosen, and in September, this gives me an opportunity to read the books and see what I think about them, and the same for you. Some book clubs, like at the library, the librarian sets the reading list, so it's up to us to decide what are the best books to choose, what gives us the most variety, fiction, nonfiction, what do we have available in our library so no one has to go out necessarily and buy the book. Is it available in different formats, books, audiobooks, ebooks, those sorts of things. In your book club, or for example, in my mother's book club, the Island Girls book club, each of the members comes and suggests a book to read for the next year. But you have to be ready with your suggestions. And in order to set the calendar for the next year, you have to be ready with your suggestions by, say, November, or maybe even the holiday meeting in December. So in that case, you have to have read a few different books and figure out which one you think is the best read for your book club. So really, September is a great month to start thinking about book club reads, because, like I said, it gives you a little bit of time to explore the books, to try reading a bunch of different things. I mean, you don't lose either way. Either way, you get to read a lot of really great books. And so today I'm going to talk about why I chose the books that I did, how they tie in some cases to various monthly celebrations that are celebrated nationwide. And, you know, if nothing else, even if you don't belong to a book club with our library, or you don't belong to a book club, you know, in your neighborhood or with your friends, they're really great books to read. So if you're a reader, this presentation is for you. If you're someone who's part of a book club or wants to join a book club, this presentation is also for you. So please consider sharing it with your friends and family so we can all be reading some great books in 2021 or right now. So I thought I'd go ahead and dive into the books. Before I do, I wanted to mention that in St. Johns County Library System, we have Zoom book clubs right now. We're doing all of our programming virtually. So Zoom is a really simple app that you can set up on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, on your computer, and it's an easy way to connect with other people, particularly other readers, and discuss books, because you can see everybody's faces in real time, and you can talk to each other all from the comfort and safety of your home or wherever you might be when you plug into the book club. So all you have to do is go to our website, SJCPLS.org, and look under our upcoming events under book clubs, and you'll see the Zoom book clubs, and all you have to do is sign up. The day of the book club, you'll get sent a link that you can use to log into the Zoom chat, and you're up and away. So now I'm going to dive into the books that I've tentatively selected for the Wednesday book club in 2021, and some of these may be books you've read. Some of them are brand new that maybe none of you have read yet, but I hope you find something in here that you enjoy and gives you a reason to open up a new book. So let's go ahead and dive on in. All right, so normally St. John's Reads, which is our community-wide reading project for the library system, occurs in February. And it's been in February since, I believe, St. John's Reed started. I think St. John's Reed started the year after I joined the library system. I joined the library system in 2003, and I believe it started in 2004. But if Harold George is out there and wants to correct me, by all means do. But we've been doing it for many, many years. And it's been a wonderful opportunity to pick a book that has a lot of possibilities for discussion and programming and engagement, and then we center all of our programming around that book. And so it's been a treat for us every single year. And so we've read some really wonderful books, and we're excited to announce our new book for 2021. However, I'm not going to announce that new book because it hasn't been publicized yet, or at least not at the time of this filming. So for January, I'm going to say, since St. John's Reed's is moving to January in 2021, that much I can tell you. I just can't tell you the title yet, but I can tell you this. I'm on the St. John's Reed's committee, and I think you're going to love it. So that's going to be our book for 2021, the mysterious St. John's Reed's title for 2021, which should be announced any day now. So jumping ahead to February, February is Black History Month, and one of the reasons that we moved St. John's Reed's to January was so that we could better explore Black History Month in February through displays, through programming, through reading. And so we're really excited to do that this year. And so I got to thinking, what would be a great book to read for Black History Month in February for the book club? And I thought of John Lewis, who just recently passed in July of 2020. And this will be the first Black History Month that the nation has celebrated without him, and the tremendous things that he did in his lifetime, particularly during the Civil Rights Movement. So a brand new book that just came out in August, last month, in August, that we own in print and in ebook, is His Truth is Marching On, John Lewis and the Power of Hope by John Beecham. So that's going to be our February read. And I think our book club is really going to enjoy it. It's all about John Lewis's life and the contributions he made during the Civil Rights Movement. And I thought it would be a great way to honor someone that we've recently lost that made a really impactful difference to Black history. So that's the book that we're going to read in February, but it was a really hard choice because there's a big selection, a really great selection of Black history books, particularly right now, that you can check out at your library. So this was just one of several candidates that I considered. So that's another great thing when you tie into these nationwide monthly celebrations. Sometimes it gives you a jumping off place to think of a lot of different books that you could use for your book club. And so do you have to tie into nationwide celebrations? No, you don't. It's just the same as if you're a fiction book club, you can be a fiction book club. If you're a nonfiction book club, you can be a nonfiction book club. At the library though, we like to try to, change it up, have a little fiction, have a little nonfiction, have some biographies, when it makes sense and it gives us opportunities to present some great books, maybe tie into some of these month-wide celebrations. And so that's where this book came from, and I'm excited for the book club to read it. So if you want to check it out, it's available to you right now. So that's our book for February, and next is our book for March. And once again, I decided to creatively tie into Women's History Month with a title you might not have expected. And I decided to go with Margaret Atwood and the Testaments. Now, for you Margaret Atwood fans out there like me, you know that the Testaments is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. Now I'm going to tell the book club in March, you don't have to read The Handmaid's Tale in order to read the Testaments, because I've read both books. You don't have to, but I do think it enhances your reading experience. And luckily, the group of people that I have come out for the Wednesday book club are very avid, engaged readers. So giving them a quote-unquote homework assignment of getting to read 2 books for the month instead of 1 would hardly be considered a penalty. So why did I choose Margaret Atwood, The Testaments, for Women's History Month? That may seem like a really odd choice, because if you've read The Handmaid's Tale or The Testaments, you know it's kind of the grandmother, if you will, of dystopian fiction. It's kind of like, standing on the shoulders of giants, all the dystopian fiction explosion that happened in teen fiction. I look back at The Handmaid's Tale in 1984 and all those different books that kind of started that whole genre. So how can a dystopian fiction book tell us something about women's history? Because we're reading about something that we hope never happens. One of the most interesting things I found out about Margaret Atwood is that both in The Handmaid's Tale and in the Testaments, she went out of her way to make sure that every single thing that happened in these books, the ceremonies, the participations, the rituals, if you will, everything in this book has a precedent either in history or a precedent somewhere else in the world. And that's what makes it so chilling. Now, she's brought it home to the United States, which makes it unavoidable to imagine. Sometimes when something takes place in a faraway country, you can almost distance yourself from it. But she's brought it right home to our home country where you can't look away. And like I said, it really added to the intensity of the book, knowing that every single thing in the book was not a made-up thing. Now, Gilead, the country that this book is about, and I don't want to give away too many details because you really need to read it for yourself, but Gilead, of course, is a made-up country, and what's happened in this dystopian future is, of course, made up, thank goodness. But everything that happens within the story has a precedent. So that's why I thought it was perfect for women's history, because these books are so centered on women, on oppressing women, on just putting women down at the lowest possible level. So it seemed like a fitting book to read for women's history. So I'm hoping that the book club doesn't mind me asking them to read 2 books. Some of them may have already read The Handmaid's Tale. And this is also good timing too, because I believe season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale is coming out on Hulu, which is a streaming network. It's coming out this spring. So this will be great timing, because of course all that excitement will be ramping back up to see season 4 that was pushed back due to COVID, and people will be interested in reading The Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments again and seeing if they start to weave what happens in the Testaments into The Handmaid's Tale that's showing on TV. So that's our book for March. And then in April, I once again decided to tie into a month-wide celebration before I switch over to just pure summer reading. And April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I thought there's so many good books out there, but one that particularly resonated with me was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Now, the interesting thing here is the reason this book is called Know My Name is because a lot of people don't. They don't know who Chanel Miller is. Who is Chanel Miller, and what relevance is there, with this book about, sexual assault and its aftermath and being a victim and dealing with that, is there, because it's a biography. So we know that this isn't a fictionalized account. Well, unfortunately, as soon as I say the words Stanford rapist, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And Chanel Miller was his victim. And for a long time, no one really knew who she was. Even though this was a crime that happened to her, there was far more press about the attacker, the rapist, and his life, and his ambitions, and his need to not be too hardly punished than there was about the victim herself. And that's what this book is about. This book is about demystifying who she is and what she went through and how she felt. It's not a graphic account, but at the same time, she does not shy away from what it was like in that courtroom, to have everything that she did or said be questioned, even though she was the victim in this crime. And she talks about the impact it had on her personal life, on her family, on her friends, on her boyfriend, and just everything that occurred right up to that impactful victim statement that she read aloud in court, that immediately went viral all over the internet because it resonated with a lot of other sexual assault victims. And I think that for her, in reading the story, that was her point. She wanted to give those people a name and a voice and an opportunity to express who they are, and that they are so much more than just this crime. So, like I said, it was a really impactful read. I think the Wednesday Book Club is going to enjoy reading it. And again, I like that it kind of, we have a little bit balance of nonfiction as well as fiction and biographies there. So, of course, I'm sitting right in front of my biography section, which is one of my favorite sections in adult nonfiction. So this should be a really impactful book for us to read. It may be a book that you have read. It may be a book that you haven't read. And if you haven't read it, I really do recommend it, because again, we unfortunately, as a society, knew all too much about the attacker and all too little about the victim. And it really does open one's eyes, especially if you're not someone who's a sexual assault victim. It really opens your eyes to how they are treated in society, how they're treated in court, why, unfortunately, men and women alike who are sexual assault victims end up staying silent. So again, a very impactful read that we have in print and in ebook. So then when we switch over to May, and I always think of May through August as our summer months, although in Florida, my goodness, I think probably 3/4 of the year could be considered summer, because it doesn't ever seem to cool down. It's supposedly fall in a few weeks and not feeling like fall. Still feels like summer. But I think of May through August as summer, because that's kind of when we start ramping up summer reading and people start looking for their beach reads and their pool reads, or if you've watched a video of mine in the past, their summer suspense thrillers. So for the month of May, we had the most fun we ever had. And one of the themes that I have going in my summer selections, although it trickles into the fall as well, is that one of the things I love to choose is not only books that have an engagement factor and a lot of discussion, but also books that end up being turned into movies, into limited series, into mini series, because it's so interesting to compare and contrast how those were done. How faithful were they to the source material? Were the actors and actresses well chosen? Did you agree with what they decided to include and not include? And in the case of the most fun we ever had, it's been picked up for series treatment, hopefully sometime later in 2021. But this is a great book, I thought, for May, because I think of May, and I think of Mother's Day. I'm a mother myself. And this book is about families. And it's about a couple that meets in the 70s, and they fall in love, and they get married, and eventually they have 4 children. And, they believe that, their life is just going to be idyllic. And then as these girls grow up, they realize how different these 4 daughters are. And as they're into their 20s, and so their lives are fraught with confusion and struggle and strife. And that's kind of the bedrock of this book. It's about these 4 different daughters and the different paths that their lives take them. Even though they were all raised in the same house, how differently their lives have diverged. And then something that brings the whole family together and then could incidentally blow them all apart. So it's a really great read, and I don't want to give anything away. It's a really great read because it's an opportunity to talk about families and talk about siblings, and how siblings growing up in the same house can turn out so differently and have such complex lives, and how they can come together in a way, and then also how it can fracture them apart. So I think it'll be a really good read for us in May. And of course, it's got a huge wait list right now, so put yourself on the list if you want to go ahead and read it, because eventually your name will come up. I believe we own it as an ebook as well. And like I said, it's just a really interesting exploration of families and how what you think your family is going to be like, as a mother and a father, and how differently it turns out, and how all those personalities work together, and then how they can all really clash. So again, I'm trying to be really careful talking about this book because I don't want to give away any spoilers. Librarians are very good at that. We don't give away spoilers, but it was a very engaging read and very thought-provoking, and really made you think back on your family, and if you have brothers and sisters, and just how differently you can all turn out, and how different your past may be, but then how you have that commonality of family. So I believe Laura Dern and Amy Adams are going to be the producers of this. So I imagine it's going to be a really rich adaptation. It should be very interesting to see it play out on the small screen at home. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out. The next one is a little bit of a departure from a TV or a movie adaptation, but I thought, what about we read about some local true crime? And what better and more memorable local true crime than, of course, the Bloody Sunset murder that so many people have read about in the late 90s when Bloody Sunset came out, the murder of Athalia. Well, in 2016, another book was written called Murder in St. Augustine, The Mysterious Death of Athalia Ponzell Lindsley. And if you've read Bloody Sunset, or even if you haven't, it's a really engaging account because, of course, the books were published, almost 20 years apart. So there have been some new things that have been learned and some new perspectives that maybe weren't considered in the 1998 book Bloody Sunset. But it still remains an unsolved murder to this day, almost 100 years later. It's still unsolved. And people who've visited downtown St. Augustine and are familiar with downtown St. Augustine know exactly where that house is. And it was just unbelievable. I mean, a woman being murdered in broad daylight on her front step with a machete. It doesn't sound real, and yet the old saying of truth being stranger than fiction is absolutely apt in this case. So I thought this would be an interesting read for us in the summertime, rather than reading maybe a summer thriller, reading something that is true crime that happened more or less in our own backyards, mostly long before any of us were really around and old enough to understand it or be alive for it, but still something that is very much part of St. Augustine's history. So that's what we're going to read in June. And again, every town has its own tale, and I suppose in one way or another, this is one of St. Augustine's. And I always hope that sometime, perhaps in my lifetime, they're eventually going to solve this crime. But some crimes are really difficult to solve, especially those that took place so long ago before there was all the technology and forensics and everything else that we have available to us today. So that is the June read. And then for July, I did decide to tie back into a month-wide celebration. July is National Parks and Recreation Month. And I'm a big fan of national parks, as is my husband and my daughter. And there was a recent book that came out in April that I actually bought a copy of for my husband for Father's Day. And it's called Leave Only Footprints, My Acadia to Zion Journey Through Every National Park. So it's a really incredible story, especially since we're not able to travel as much as we'd like to right now. It's basically opening up a book again to travel to all the national parks, thanks to Connor Knighton. Unfortunately, poor Connor, he had a broken engagement, a broken heart, and he decided he needed to do something different. He needed a change. So he took a year off of work and decided that in 1 year, he was going to visit every single national park in the United States. Now, at first glance, you think, well, how hard would that be? There's, 350-something days in a year, and how many national parks could there possibly be? 10, 15? No, there's actually a lot more national parks than even I knew about here in the United States. And so in some instances, he's able to stay at a park for a little while. In some instances, he's only able to stay for maybe a day or two. But he went to every single one. And according to him, it completely changed his life. It changed his outlook. And so I thought this would be a great book to read in the summer when a lot of people like to travel. Here's a way to travel from your very own couch or your bed or your chair out on your lanai. You can travel with Connor Knighton to all the national parks. And we own this book in print and in ebook. I highly recommend checking it out. I enjoyed getting it for my husband. It's on his list of to be reads. Right after that Jared Diamond book he's still trying to finish. But it was a great book to get for him for Father's Day. And again, a biography, and not only so much a biography, but almost like a travel log. Like if you've ever read Bill Bryson, much like that, where you're basically taking a journey with someone else, and you're seeing it through their eyes. And if you're a fan of national parks or travel or both, then this is a great book for you. So that was for July. And of course, I couldn't let the summer go by and not do a summer thriller. So, of course, I had to go to LIANE Moriarty and do Truly, Madly Guilty. Now, if any of you watched Big Little Lies with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman and Laura Dern and a whole cast of powerhouse actresses, they really took a wonderful book and made an incredible adaptation. And you can't always say that about page-to-screen adaptations, unfortunately. Well, Reese and Nicole have picked up Truly, Madly Guilty, and I can't wait to see what they do with it in 2021. And one of the great things about LIANE's books is she very much has a female voice, not just being a woman herself, but she captures a lot of different women's voices. And much like Big Little Lies, you start with kind of an explosive revelation at the beginning that you're confused, you don't know how this happened, why this happened, maybe necessarily who it happened to, and then you flash back to the past. And you get to hear about several different incidents from several different female narratives. So sometimes you get the same thing, but you get a totally different take on it because there's a different female narrative at the wheel telling you the story through her own eyes and in her own voice. So again, if you're a big fan of Big Little Lies, the book, or Big Little Lies, the miniseries, then I think you'll devour Truly, Madly Guilty, and I hope the book club feels the same way. Because again, our book club is open to men and to women. Right now it is predominantly women, but I think anytime you've got a book that's got multiple narrators, you've got all sorts of different possibilities to talk about characters and how someone's own life circumstances and perspective so colors in their world and how they see it. So again, I don't want to give it away any of the suspense, but I thought, well, you know, again, we've got women, we've got mothers. August is back to school, so it just seemed like a fitting time to read a summer thriller centered around women, centered around mothers, and hopefully before the miniseries adaptation comes out, so that we can compare and contrast. So that is our August selection. So after all this true crime and summer thrillers and everything like that, I thought I'd go with a cozier read for September and tie into National Library Card Sign-Up Month, which is this month. Get that library card if you haven't already, so you can check out these books and download the ebooks. And I thought I'd go with a cozy read from a few years back, Dewey, the small town library cat who touched the world. So we're reading about libraries, we're reading about cats. So, you know, for our readers, for our pet lovers, for someone who just wants maybe a break from those edgy summer thrillers and just wants a cozy read and curl up with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and a warm blanket, then this is the read for you. So I thought it was fitting for National Library Card Sign-Up National Library Card Sign-Up Month. National Library Week is in April. National Library Card Sign-Up Month is in September. So I thought this was just a really cute, engaging, cozy read that we could do for September to kind of break up some of the darkness maybe in some of the books prior to this one. So a cozy read. And Vicki Myron, who wrote this book, also wrote a sequel to this book. There's some children's adaptations of this book. So I'm hoping for our members who are moms or who are grandmothers or fathers or grandfathers that maybe they'll also consider checking out the children's adaptation of the book and sharing it with their kids or their grandkids. Now, in October, since we've already done true crime with Murder in St. Augustine in June, I thought I'd go back to a thriller of sorts. And this is also going to be coming onto HBO, courtesy of Nicole Kidman, and I know she's going to do an amazing job. And it's going to be called, when it's on HBO, The Undoing. The book, however, is called You Should Have Known. Now, I'm a little on the fence about whether or not I like when they change the title of an adaptation, because I think sometimes it's harder to tie it back to a book, because people will come in and say, hey, do you have that book called The Undoing? But it'll really be, oh, you mean the adaptation, The Undoing, the book is You Should Have Known. Which hopefully they understand that's the title, not what we're trying to tell them when they come in and ask for the book. But this is an interesting story because I guess in a way it's suspenseful. Maybe it's not a thriller as much as it is how interesting it is when someone dedicates their life, their profession, and everything about themselves to one pursuit, and in their own personal life, there's such a contrast. So imagining Nicole Killer in this title role as a counselor and helping women not get blindsided by men who are not what they seem, who are doing things behind their back, who are kind of leading them down a primrose path only to, not be what they expected them to be. In other words, unfortunately, hearing the advice later, you should have known. She even goes so far as being successful in that arena as to wanting to write a book about all the warning signs you should be looking for and all the clues you should know about so that you don't ever end up in this situation. And the contrast there is in her own life, she isn't seeing it for herself. She's helping other people, she's writing about it, she's considered an expert on it, and yet in her own life, it's much bigger of a mess than she ever thought it could be. So that's really interesting about how sometimes you can see so clearly a problem or a challenge when it's happening to somebody else, and yet be so blinded by that same exact occurrence in your own life. So I thought a very thought-provoking read for October. And what's great about this is we'll read this book and discuss it in either early to mid-October, and then at the end of October, on October 25th, is when The Undoing, the adaptation, comes out. So we'll be able to read the book and then immediately watch the adaptation if we choose to do so, and see how well they did with the story. So I thought that was really good timing. Now, not skipping November, because November's my birth month. I love November. November is when we finally start to feel like autumn has arrived. But just to make a point, I don't have a December read because December is our holiday party where we all bring our own book and we share something that we really enjoyed. So it's a great time to get all sorts of gift ideas as well as create a gigantic to-read list for ourselves. So this is my final book, November. I just wanted to preface why there's not a December book. And it's one of my personal favorites, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Now, if I had someone tell me that I would do a virtual program someday and mention a Stephen King book as one of my favorite books, I wouldn't have believed them. Because honest to goodness, Stephen King stories scare the pants off me. I never thought I'd be a Stephen King reader. I have great admiration for his storytelling abilities. He can tell a tale like almost nobody else. He's not always satisfied with his adaptations, and I can't say I blame him for that. But I read 11/22/63 upon hearing the premise, and I never looked back. I think the only regret I had is when I got to the last page, and it's like almost 900 pages long, and I thought, that's it? But I want 900 more pages. So what a wonderful conundrum to face at the end of a book. But it incorporates one of my favorite fictional devices, and that is time travel. And it talks about an English teacher named Jake, who has a friend who runs a diner, who has incidentally found out that his diner contains a portal to 1958. And that anytime you go in there, no matter how long you stay, when you come back, only 2 minutes has passed. But here's the big problem. The diner owner, a friend of Jake's, asked him this one little thing. He asked him, can you go back in time and stop the assassination of JFK? And so that's the premise of the book. And you think, oh my goodness. So he's got to figure out who shot JFK, and then he's got to find out a way to stop them. And that's incredibly challenging. But the most challenging part is who ends up being his antagonist. Every good story has a protagonist, the main character, and an antagonist, their enemy, someone working against them. You know, you've always heard in high school where it's, you know, man versus man, man versus nature. I guess you would say this is man versus nature, because the antagonist in his story, interestingly enough, is not Lee Harvey Oswald, who both the diner owner and Jake suspect is the shooter of JFK. He's not the antagonist. The antagonist is the past, because the past doesn't want to be changed. And anytime you try to change the past fights back. And the bigger the change, the more it fights. And so it's just an incredibly gripping tale. It took me right back to the 50s and 60s. My parents were high school sweethearts in the 50s and 60s, and it took me back to that. And for any of you who've ever read the book It by Stephen King, there were a lot of Easter eggs for the book It, because part of the story takes place in, believe it or not, 1950s Derry. So it is an incredible story, but it's about so much more. The assassination of JFK is about the 50s and 60s. It's about a woman that he meets during that time. And it's about how, even though he becomes immersed into 50s and 60s, how he can never escape the past wanting to fight him down to the ground to stop him from changing the past. Because who knows how much else will change with it. So an incredible read. If you haven't read it, I can't recommend it highly enough. And I'm so excited to end our Wednesday book club year in 2021 with one of my favorite books of all time. And believe it or not, as much as I love to read print books, the audiobook is even better, because the narrator is just incredible. In fact, now I want to check it out all over again and listen to it in my car, which is probably what I'll do after this presentation. So I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I've highlighted some books that you're excited about reading, maybe suggesting for your book club after you've had a chance to read them, maybe joining us for the Wednesday book club in 2021 when we get a chance to do face-to-face programming again. Do consider our Zoom book clubs that you can sign up for on our website, sjcpls.org, under upcoming events. And get that library card. Get those free books, get those free ebooks. All you have to do is go to one of our 6 library branches, and you can get a library card. And if you live in St. Johns County, or you work for the county, for example, if you're a St. Johns County teacher, you're eligible for a free card. So no time to waste. So thanks again for joining me. Have a great day, and happy reading. Bye.